like my favorite place to ever cite or send somebody to. So they had one that was very similar to mine, so I took it and I kind of filled in a few spots and I figured I'll go from theirs. So I'm gonna kind of switch today's talk a little bit. I was planning on, expecting the room to have a lot more non-Muslims and a lot more Muslims. So since I'm here, we're gonna talk about it. So I'll make it more from the sense of, for us as Muslims here, what are some of the basics that we get asked about all the time, and how we can answer. And I'm sure you guys get asked about it all the time, so we'll just go over them, that kind of thing. So Why Islam, if someone doesn't know, it's a website. It's called whyislam.org. In my opinion, it's one of the greatest go-to sources. Anybody that has questions, I usually send them there. For the most part, it's a pretty good source. It's reliable, and it doesn't have a lot of bogus on it. I hate having somebody just end up on YouTube or on Google, because there are a lot of sources that are no bueno. So whyislam.org is a great source. And then if somebody has further interest, Juan, if you have any other interest, they have brochures that they'll send you, copies of the Quran in every language that I recognize. And even their literature, a lot of the literature that we have in the mosque, we actually order from them. So it's a great source. If you have any questions about something, I would go to it. If you have any friends that have questions, or somebody at work or colleagues, I usually send everybody there. If they're on, the other ones that I talk to are people or English speakers. So Norman Ali Khan, if they have a lot of interest, and he's another good one that I like, and Hamza Yusuf is another great one. So we'll cover it from the sense of, hey, we're Muslims, we live here. Some of the basics about Islam, questions that we get asked, how do we answer them? Is that cool, Juan? Mm-hmm. All right. Now, obviously, this is not a class, and I'm not a teacher, so let's keep it as a conversation. We'll go through it, and you guys pitch in and keep it as a conversation. It'll be a lot easier for everyone. Cool? All right. I didn't do a lot of public speaking. I'm a dentist for a living. All right. So we'll go through the basics, which are beliefs, actions, and then misconceptions, and I'm going to cover some of pop culture and Muslims. So in Islam, the basic concept of Islam is why Allah, or why God. Obviously Allah just means God, right? Everyone's aware of that, right? So why God created Muslims, and then from the Quran, God says that He created humans. And from the Quran, we know that God told us that He created humans and jinn, other creation, for no other reason but to worship Him. Now, I'm just going to pass through jinn without going into detail, because it's a whole other topic on its own, covering what jinn is. Or maybe we'll jump into it then. This is what we believe in, right? So monotheism, which means that we believe in one God, right? You have religions like Hindu, which have multiple gods, and then there's religions like Christianity or Judaism or Islam, where there's only one God. The deity is God. We believe that there's just a God, created everything and knows everything about everything. The word Allah just means God in Arabic, nothing more than that. So, if you know any Christians that are Arabic, and I don't know if there's any on campus, but for example, I worked, one of my good friends, he's Jordanian, they still use the word Allah to refer to God. So if you're in a Christian church, they're still going to use the word Allah or Rabb, which are two words that we use as Muslims as well. They're just translations of the word God. The holy book for us is the Quran, comparable to obviously the Bible or Torah for the Jews. And then the prophet that brought our message is Prophet Muhammad, and then we believe that the Prophet Muhammad was the last prophet that God sent. So those are kind of the basics, right? So keep flying through here. The Sunnah, you'll hear this word a lot. If somebody asks, Sunnah is just the way the Prophet lived. So they're stories or sayings of the Prophet. So, the Prophet used to do this with his mom. The Prophet talked about this to the wife. The Prophet, used to feed the animals. The Prophet, in our concept, we know that the Prophet actually talked quite a bit about animals and animal rights before animal rights were ever a thing, right? So a lot of these things, they fall under the idea of Sunnah, and that's what Sunnah is. It's just traditions or sayings and actions that the Prophet did We believe that he was, our teacher, so he's somebody that we look up to and somebody that we want to learn from. So the traditions and sayings and things and his actions are things that we study, and they're of great importance in Islam because they're things that we study to try to learn from and imitate in our life. I really like this picture, and I know it has, very little to do kind of what we're talking about. But I really like this picture because what is a Muslim? A Muslim is, the literal translation is just submission. Islam is to submit, right? So a Muslim is somebody who submits, and that essence is somebody who submits their will to a God, to a greater being, right? That's being a Muslim. To sallam amrak, you give yourself or your actions to God, and that's it. So that's really submission, and it's the basis of Islam. I really like this picture, and I came across a few other pictures on Google because to the guys in here, you visited some of the bigger mosques in Houston, right? Abdul Ghani, did you come from another city in the U.S. or no?
I'm from Stillwater.
From where?
Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma. I've never been up there. I don't know what it's like. Is there a big city? Is there a big Muslim community?
I don't know. It's just college town.
Oh, okay. Well, for those that came from bigger Muslim communities, and if you haven't visited, I would highly recommend visiting a mosque. It's literally one of the most multicultural places you'll walk into, right? You walk in, and you look around this room today, there's somebody, Christy, are you
Mexican.
Mexican, okay, cool. Iraqi, African, Pakistani, Mexican, Egyptian, right? So it's like, and if you walk into any mosque, it's literally one of the most multicultural places you'll come across. And I like this picture because it shows like a darker skinned African with a lighter, probably maybe white, but it's very, very true. And if Islam came, one of the biggest things was the period of time that the Arabs before Islam were in, racism was huge. One of the biggest things that it came to fight was the idea that there's no difference between color. There's no difference between a man and a woman, and there's no difference between a black or a white. And at the time, they considered Arabs to be the highest, right? So it was, if you're of Arab or noble blood, that's the highest status. Anybody else is lower. Even if you're Arab but you don't come from noble blood, you're lower, right? So Islam came to say, no, all of it is untrue. All of that is untrue. So I like this picture. So anyone can become a Muslim. Obviously, all of you guys know that. And then, Assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam. I think all of you guys know. Juan, that's how we say hi. Assalamu alaikum is literally, I'm going to pick on this guy all day. It just means, may peace be upon you. And I always say to those that don't speak Arabic, it's literally one of the most beautiful, greetings you can say. Like, hey, how you doing today? Is really lame, because no one really cares to hear that answer, actually. For the most part, it's like, hey, how are you? Right? But we don't really care to know how you're doing, right? It's just a greeting. Assalamu alaikum is a beautiful greeting, and I really like it, because you walk up to somebody that you don't know, and you say, peace be upon you. Like, I come with nothing but good intentions, And it's really cool to see it when you go to a Muslim country and you walk around and you go into a store, or you go into a mosque, or you walk into a dark alley and you see a shadow and you don't know who it is, and you just say, Assalamu alaikum. And they reply from the shadow and go, alaikum salam. It's really, really cool. And it just gives this sense of safety. Alaikum salam is the response. So what do Muslims believe? Obviously we believe a lot of things. Some of the basics that we believe are, that we believe in Allah, which is the God. We believe in one God. We don't believe in my God and your God, and we don't believe in Allah is better than your God, right? We believe in just a God. The God is the God of all, right? So we believe in one God. In Arabic, the word Allah. Angels, we do believe in angels. You can't be a Muslim without believing in angels, so we do believe in the angels. We believe in prophets. Those prophets do include Jesus and Moses. Obviously, all the Muslims in here know that. We believe in revelations and the revelations that came before us. Here it comes, His Majesty. Alright. Oh. So Zubair, we're kind of changing it to like a Muslim talk.
Yes, you can.
So we believe in the revelations. You can't be a Muslim and not believe in the books that came before Islam. So this is really important for us if we're talking to non-Muslims, to know that it will come up, and you hear it all the time, and I would consider it one of the biggest misconceptions, is that we don't believe in Jesus, right? Or you don't believe in the Bible. No, we actually do believe in Jesus, and we believe in the Bible. And we believe in Moses and the Old Testament. So those, you can't be a Muslim without believing in them. Another one is the hereafter, or a day where somebody, you're going to get judged. You know, the concept of you don't just go to dirt and that's it. No, there are consequences for your actions. There are rewards for your actions, and the idea of heaven and hell. Those do exist in Islam, and it's one of the basic concepts of Islam. The next one is called predestination, which is funny because that was our khutbah topic a few weeks ago. And it is one of the core beliefs as a Muslim. You can't be a Muslim and not believe in the idea of qadr or predestination, or the idea of, your fate has kind of been decided. But, obviously this is a whole topic on its own. It doesn't mean that our actions are of no meaning because things are pre-decided. No, because you have no idea what's been pre-decided for you. We live every day and you work every day as, you get to write your own fate. But you do know that at the end of the day, what's meant for you is coming for you. And that's kind of where that comes in. Allah, the only God, so we went over this. There are many, many names for Allah. So, for example, we have Brother Abdul Ghani with us, so Al-Ghani is the name of Allah, right? You'll meet people that are named Abdul Kareem, Abdul Latif, there's a lot of names, but all these names describe their characteristics of the God. So they're the most merciful, the most gracious, so they're all characteristics of the God, the one God. I'll try to skip through a lot of stuff so we can finish. So the angels, we believe that they're the only perfect creatures that Allah created. Again, I kind of mentioned quickly that we do believe in something called the jinn. So the angels are perfect. They just do what Allah tells them to do. They just do what God tells them to do. They don't argue. Humans, we're not perfect. We're full of trouble. The jinn, the other creation that Allah created, is similar to humans. They do make mistakes. There's good ones and bad ones. There's ones that will... Muslims, we should all know that. We don't believe that the Quran is better than the tempered with for hundreds or thousands of years, and that's why the Quran came down to be kind of like a final message. One of the ways of our religion. This is what our religion is built around. So in times of hardship, we refer to the Quran, and in times of confusion, we refer to the Quran. So it's really important that it is not a flexible item that we can just change, which we believe was one of the issues with the previous books and the previous nations, is that they took out of their books what they didn't like, right? So we have stories in the Quran that say some of the previous nations, they took out of their books what they didn't like, and they left what they liked. So that's why if there's something in there that we don't like, something in there that we can't apply to today, something in there that we don't agree with, we don't remove it, it's in there, but we don't understand it. And there are things in the Quran that people that came before didn't understand. For example, descriptions of, a black hole. So there's ayats in the Quran that describe something very, very similar to what we know today as a black hole phenomenon in the skies, right? So we, people that lived 1400 years ago read this over and over and had no idea what it meant. Another one, for physicians and biologists in the room, is the description of a fetus, and it describes it as a chewed piece of gum. You take a piece of gum and you chew down on it, and you take it out, and it looks all funky. It looks very similar to what like a very small, tiny embryo looks like. Or the stages of fetus development is described in the Quran. Now, the people that lived 1400 years ago in the time of the Prophet had no idea what that was. They didn't understand it. For us today, we may understand some of these scientific things better than other people, and there are things in there that people 100 years from today are going to understand that we never understood. So that's why it's really important for us to understand why we don't change our Quran. It's not something that's flexible, and the sad thing is that it is actually a movement, and a lot of Muslims will, kind of repeat. So that's my note.
And also you need to know that the Quran is miracle by itself.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's the
Yeah.
same language we speak, but no one can
Come up with
produce
something
speech like it.
Yeah, which is very, very true.
Arabics actually, when the Prophet came, when the message came to the Prophet, peace be upon him, they were saying that the Quran was just made up or something. They just tried to make people go away from it. So the Quran itself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God challenges them to produce something like it. they speak the same language. They speak the same language. But Quran, God challenged them to produce any like surah, just like and it was said in the Quran, you won't do it and you will never do it. And the miracle stay until this day.
Yeah.
No one can produce something like it. Even
and actually, to add on top of that, their claim to fame at the time was they were linguists. You know, there were people that spoke this language very, very well. So, you know, he's absolutely correct. You take the best of Arabic speakers today, and they're nothing like the people who spoke Arabic back then. So you're absolutely correct, 100%. The Quran within itself, the linguistics of it, are a miracle. Unfortunately, it's a miracle that most Arab speakers today, you know, don't really understand it very well because our level of Arabic is really poor. But to them back then, they heard it, and what struck them was the linguistic aspect of it. For us, it may be more a scientific aspect. For others, it may be, you know, finding answers to questions that you may be going through in life. So that's the Quran, and it's more than just a message. So you're absolutely correct. So it's preserved in the exact original form. The order in it. So you'll hear people. I'm trying to hit points. So if you guys come across points that, you know, things that you'll hear on Fox News or in the Donald Trump debate or anything, or questions that you'll hear from your friends or topics that will come up, bring them up, and so we can talk about them because it'll be a lot easier. So one thing that comes up is, you know, you claim this Quran is sent this way from God, but it wasn't. It was organized by men, or it was written by men. And it's like, yes, you're absolutely correct. It was written by men, and it was organized by men. But we believe that the men that organized it were men that were much more knowledgeable than us. The Quran came down in a certain sequence, and the Prophet would tell them to put it where. And it wasn't organized in the sequence of chapters the way it's in right now, like these chapters where they go till after the death of the Prophet. But it doesn't change the meaning of the Quran, because the Quran doesn't go in a sequential manner. And for anyone that says that, my answer to them is, you clearly haven't read the Quran. Because if you have read the Quran, you will know that it doesn't even go in a sequential manner. You know, it's not like chapter 1 and it's followed by chapter 2 that picked up where chapter 1 ended, you know. So clearly you don't know what you're talking about. And if even you're going to pull a judgment or pull a story out of the Quran, you know, like for example, the story of Adam is not just written in one part in particular, right? No, it's actually spread kind of all over. So you've got to read the book from cover to cover to collect the story of Adam, put it together, and kind of make sense out of it. So for a lot of things in it, it becomes very complex. Not impossible, but very complex. You got to dedicate the time to understanding the language, dedicate the time to reading it and understanding it if you want to pull it and do it yourself. So that's one thing that always comes up is that, you know, so this was put together by men. Yes, it was. It wasn't revealed by men. It wasn't, you know, preserved by men, but it was put together by men. They put it in that order. And they're who we refer to as the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet, the people that lived around. Memorized by, I don't know how true this number is, 10 million. It's probably more, to be honest. There's like 1.3 billion people on Earth, and I think it's probably more. This is memorize this book from cover to cover, which is incredible. And most people will tell you that you can read this Quran in front of somebody, and I can sit with a copy to make sure you're reading it correct, and I'll miss mistakes, but somebody who hasn't memorized will never miss a mistake. You make a mistake in front of them and they'll catch it like that, which is very true, and you always see, again, if you're in a bigger mosque in a Taraweeh, Taraweeh is obviously Ramadan prayer, you'll always see it. You'll see the person leading the Salah make a mistake, and like 10 people behind them like that, just automatically correct them on the spot. Because when you memorize it one way, you can't hear it wrong, and it'll just pass by. It's stuck in your head. So I always, you know, mention that. It's like, you know, you can take away the book, the Quran itself, but it's meant to be memorized. And, you know, there's words in there that say we've made it simple to be memorized. It's meant to be something that's memorized, not necessarily something that's just like written. It's meant to be recited. Contains some of the things that are in it that we've talked about right now. Contains history, right? So some of the history in the Quran are places that are still around till today. For example, the pharaohs, right? You go to Egypt and you'll see some of these things that the Quran talked about. For example, I'm trying to remember what they're called. They're a civilization that lived in Saudi Arabia. Ad, Samud or Ad? One of them. lives in Saudi Arabia. Their homes are still there, and you can go visit them. Science, we talked about, the embryo, the development of the embryo, the prophecies, what happened with other prophets, what happened with our prophet, and what's some of the things that we expect to happen in our life. And there are things that we see in our life today where you sit around and you see the division within the Muslims, for example. Miracles, the miracles of Jesus, which are slightly different in Christians. And I think as Muslims, we should all kind of review what we believe are the miracles of Jesus versus what Christians have in their literature, because it's obviously a conversation that will come up a lot. So for example, one that I'm not aware of being in Christians, one, please correct me if I'm wrong, is the idea that Jesus spoke as an infant. Do Christians have that? No, right? So we have that Jesus spoke as an infant. When his mother Mary had him in her hand, and people walked in and said, what are you doing here? Why is there a baby here? That Jesus spoke and explained, right? So obviously it's a miracle. You don't have an infant speak. So that's one of the miracles that we have. Inspiration, stories to inspire us to do good things and scare us from doing bad things. Salvation, there's a lot of stories about what the afterlife is like, if you've done good or if you've done bad, to try to encourage you. A guide on how to live, and we refer to it, this is our guidebook. So that's why the Quran is really important. In so many ways, this is our guidebook. It's a picture of an old mushaf. I think the oldest mushaf right now is in the Washington Library, right? So it's a picture of an old mushaf or Quran is the same thing. Life after death. So we kind of mentioned this quickly earlier, that Muslims do believe in life after death. It is one of the cornerstones of Islam. You cannot be a Muslim and not believe in life after death. It is one of the core beliefs. You live and you're held accountable for your actions. You do good, you get rewarded. You do bad, you'll eat it. Predestination. Now, I'm going to skip through it because we kind of talked about it earlier, and I think this is a big topic on its own. But for Muslims, if somebody comes up to you and says, well, if your fate is predestined, why work for anything? Right? So why work for anything? If my fate is predestined, right, if everything's already been decided for me, why do you study to go to med school if it's not meant for you to go to med school? Why do you study?
Because I don't know that.
Because you don't know that. That's right. That's the key. Is that we don't know what's predestined for us. So you wake up every day and you work your butt off because you don't know what's written for you. So you work for what's written for you. Is how the Prophet taught us. Is that you work and you live, and what you get is what's written for you. But you don't, sit around as a potato couch and say, well, this is what's coming for me, so it's fine.
Couch potato.
What is it?
Couch potato.
What did I say?
Potato
couch. Yeah, the potato couch. Maybe potato couch. The 5 pillars of Islam, obviously, as Muslims, we all know these. I think they're great because they're, overall, they're overall, aside from the last one, they're the basics of most religions, right? You don't have a religion that says, kill your neighbor, right? You don't have a religion that says, screw the poor. We don't have a religion that says, eat and get fat. There's no religion that preaches that, right? So a lot of the basics are going to be the same across any religion. And this brings me to my next point. As Muslims speaking to non-Muslims, it's really, really important to follow what the Quran told us when we're talking to non-Muslims, which is, if you're going to talk to people that are not Muslims, what is it? From Surah Al-Baqarah? It's start with what you have in common, right? So, it's... That's right, that's as well, yeah. I think that's also in Surah Al-Baqarah.
No, it's not. It's in
I'm going to translate what he said. Do not argue with those people of the book, Christians or Jews, and I've heard people even, even consider Hindus and Sikhs as people of the book. Do not argue with people of the book, people of other religions, except with something better. So that means if we're having this conversation, it shouldn't be a slippery slope where we're calling each other names and talking about our moms, right? I'm going to wrap it up.
No, I haven't.
What did I do wrong?
Meeting.
I'm just joking. Good luck. Thanks for stopping by, man.
Thank you.
have to go to.
Really? Well, I think, I'll keep it this way. We used to do classes like this in the mosque and stuff, and it's more along the lines of dawah classes. Common questions that you'll get, how to answer them. Common topics that you'll get, how to answer them. So, one of them is, it's always very, very important not to belittle, degrade somebody else's religion or beliefs, right? So somebody says, oh, I believe in Jesus and he's the God. We don't say, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, right? You don't say that. We say, oh, great, we believe in Jesus as well. Jesus is really important to us. Jesus' mother, Mary, is one of the greatest women ever created, right? That's a core belief in us. There's a whole chapter in the Quran, right, about Jesus. So it's really important for us. So the 5 pillars of Islam are super basic. This is the fundamentals, and then the religion it kind of falls around. They're not the religion itself, as somebody described it. It's like the corners that hold up the tent, but in the tent there's a lot of really important things. But these are the corners that hold the tent, because without them the tent will fall down. So, you got to believe that there's a God. We're working for something. There's a God here, right? We got to believe in our prayers. Our prayers is what keeps us going. We got to believe in charity. It's none of this, if you're poor, it's because you suck at life. No. We take care of the poor, and you take care of the weak, and you take care of the handicapped. Charity is very, very important. Islam is built as a society religion. It's not an individual religion. It's built to be a community religion. It's all about being a community. It's all about people taking care of each other. And not just being Muslim, even if you're in a community that's not Muslim. And again, if you go to Medina, when the Muslims were there, they set up this community and they took care of those that were around that were Muslims, right? And in times of war, if you're going to go out to war as a Muslim and somebody lives next to you that's not a Muslim, you still protect them, right? So those are all things that stuck around. Fasting, which is common in other religions as well. I'm not going to go into it because it's a big one. And then pilgrimage. You can't hit pilgrimage if you haven't done the first 4. You're not going to have the faith to spend the money and the time and the effort to go for pilgrimage when you don't believe in a God, or when you don't pray, or this and that, right? So it's very, very important to have the core beliefs before you end up going and visiting the house of God. But going and experiencing Hajj is really big. I haven't done it. I think, Reza, you said you have, right? Inshallah, in the future. I'm going to skip through these. You guys know this, right? What the Shahada is, obviously. No. It's important if you have somebody that's non-Muslim that's asking, what it is. It's just the basics is there's one God. That's all it is. And Muhammad is his prophet. Because there are other religions, right? Like the Ahl al-Kitab, you can have people that are Christians and they're like, great, we have God too. And if they're Arab, they're going to be like, yeah, and we call him Allah. Check that out. But we say, but Muhammad is a prophet. It's part of the Shahada. We have to announce that actually we believe that he's a prophet. He's not just a good person that lived. He's a prophet. He came down with a message. So our daily prayers. I'm going to go through this. It doesn't really apply to us. Beautiful scenes of people praying. If you've been to Mecca, you've been to Turkey, if you've been to Egypt, probably Iraq is the same. And you see Friday or the day of Eid, and you see masses of people praying outside on the street. Have you been to a large Muslim country yet? No? Okay. Well, if you end up going to, I don't know, if you visit Turkey or Egypt or any other country, and you'll see on Fridays, usually the mosques aren't big around, and you see the streets just lined up with people on the street. Was Turkey like that? No? Really?
Very secular.
Well, so people don't pray on the street on Fridays? No, really?
They don't go to the mosque.
Really? Okay. Well, in Egypt on Fridays, usually it's like, usually the mosques aren't big enough to handle everybody praying. So you'll see that scene on the street is what it looks like everywhere, yeah. Because the mosques aren't big enough. Zakat's charity, we talked about it again. It's more than important in Islam. This is the 2.5 is the absolute minimum. And if you have any Mormon friends, that is a sweet deal, 2.5%. They pay a lot more. Ramadan, we know what Ramadan is. Hajj, I'm going to go through this quickly. Kaaba, if you haven't visited Mecca, this is what Mecca looks like. When I see pictures of it today, it looks like nothing like I remember. Islam and Muslim. So, we covered this earlier. Islam does not mean Muslim, and Muslim does not mean Islam. Islam is perfect, Muslims are not perfect. So when you have people that talk about it,
They ask, are you Islamic?
Are you Islamic? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it's important to differentiate that, right? So no, I'm not Islamic. I'm Muslim. I'm somebody that follows this religion. I am not this religion. I'm not a perfect picture of this religion. I don't represent this religion in the best of ways, you know. So it's really, really important for us as Muslims to realize that we're not in a place to judge somebody else, Muslim or not Muslim, because you may never know, right? So those are all really, really important things that I think when talking to other Muslims that we should bring up. The common thing is, in my religion I believe that I'm better than yours, and your religion you believe that you're better than mine. And in my religion I believe that you're going to go to hell, and your religion you believe that I'm going to go to hell, right? So you guys have had this conversation? Yeah, right? So my answer to that is always, no, we don't believe that. I can't believe that. For me to believe that you're going to hell or you're going to heaven is actually a huge sin, because I just took on God's role. That is not in my hands. I don't get to decide who's going to hell or who's going to heaven. It is not in my position or any human's position to judge. And that is for a good reason, because humans are dumb. So if we got to judge each other, we'd all end up in the wrong place. So it's good that somebody else is judging us. And one of the things, this is a complete side, is that God told Muhammad that he may give him on the day of judgment to have mercy, like to give him the capability to have mercy on his people. Muhammad refused it and said, no, because you are the most merciful. There's no way I could love these people more than you could. Because at the end of the day, the person that's loving us is the most merciful. So it's really, really important that when we talk to non-Muslims that we bring that up. And I think it's something that I usually bring up in the sense that we don't judge anyone. I don't know if you as a Christian, Jewish, atheist are going to hell or heaven. And I want to say Sayyidina Umar, which was one of the companions, one of the really close companions, said that, this is one of the people that was closest to the Prophet, one of the people that we really look up to, and I think it was Sayyidina Umar, that said that I don't trust till the day I get to heaven and I put both of my feet in heaven that I'm going to heaven. Because I don't trust that I may put one foot and end up in hell. Like, it's to that point. Like, you don't know where you're going. Even as Muslims, we don't know where we're going, right? We just hope that we end up in the right place. And we don't know where somebody else is going. And the Prophet gave us many examples, right? The woman that was a prostitute that fed the cats, right? So, there's many examples of people that have lived their life the wrong way, and what we imagine is the wrong way. In the eyes of God, they were great people, and God may forgive them for their actions and allow them to heaven. None of that is our business. So that is really, really important when we're talking to someone that's not Muslim, to understand that and to live by that, to understand that, no, we're not better than anyone else. And my wife, who's non-Arab, says that Arabs have a concept that they're better than non-Arabs and they're better than Muslims, which is somewhat true. I've been around a lot of Arabs that feel like because they're Arab, they understand the Quran and they're better than non-Arabs, which couldn't be more wrong. So I think these are some of the hot topics. The Islam and culture, Islam is not a culture. I wish we had someone Jewish here. One of my good friends is Jewish. I wish we had someone Jewish here because it would fill us in. Because with Judaism, with Judaism, a lot of the traditions are somewhat cultural. Like the culture and religion are very, very close. With Islam, they are not. And it's important for us to understand it. And it's important for us to relate that, right? And for the guys like Oscar and Chrissy over there, you know that because you guys have just joined the religion recently, and you know that you still have your Mexican culture. You didn't ditch it, right? Like you didn't go home and tell your parents, no more elotes from now on. Right? You know what I mean? Like no more tacos. I'm not doing tortillas anymore. Where's my pita bread? Okay, cool. No problem, man. You don't but it's important for us to realize that, and when we're talking to non-Muslims, to carry that Islam is not necessarily comes with a certain culture. They mix, and a lot of the things that are associated with Islam today they're not Muslim things. They're not things that the religion dictated. They're more cultural things. The one thing that will come up a lot is the way women cover themselves. Women are ordered to cover their hair. That's it, right? Whether they cover their face or they don't cover their face, a lot of that culture. Whether they wear black, blue, or red, that's cultural. There's nothing that says wear black. So that's cultural. So a lot of these things are more cultural than Islamic. And being Egyptian, I can tell you that Christians from southern Egypt, from the southern part of Egypt, dress like what Westerners would consider, conservative Muslims. They wear black head to toe. and a lot of them cover their faces, and they're Christians. You know, it's just that it's the culture of the Bedouins. That's what they are. They're Arabs, people of the desert. So or Jews, Yemeni Jews. You know, they're Jews that have lived in Yemen for thousands of years. They dress and act like Muslims. But it's not because they act like Muslims. It's because some of these things are attributed to Islam, but they're not. They're Arab traditions or Arab cultures. Muslims and Arabs. Obviously, Arabs are a minority within the realm of Islam. A lot of people don't know that. It's really important for us as Muslims to know that actually Arabs make up a minority group in the world of Muslims. These guys over here make up the majority. You know, the Indian subcontinent makes up the majority of Muslims. Places like Indonesia, Malaysia, you know, the largest Muslim country in Africa is, I believe, Nigeria by population. Places like Germany probably have more Muslims than places like Lebanon. You know, so there are many, many other places that may not come to people's minds when they think about Muslims. Or China. I think China's got like 40 million Muslims. So, status of women. I think there's another topic just on women alone. But it's important for us to discuss the important roles that women had in our religion and the important people that women had that Muslims consider important. So, for example, the wife of the prophet, the wife of the Pharaoh, right? So this is somebody that Muslims consider is a very, very noble woman. She was a Muslim, but we consider her a noble woman because she was fair, she was honest, she took on Moses and she raised him well and she treated him very well, right? So she's somebody that we regard very highly. Second one we talked about is Mary. We consider the purest of pure women. We consider women learn their purity and learn their, you know, how to be from Mary. Like she's the highest role models. So if we live in a country where the majority of the people are Christians, and you have St. Mary's everything, consider their daily life as a harder struggle. To be fair, we should also know that as Muslims, per se, so we are not taught to run the other way. You're taught if you are abused, you stand up for yourself. You collectively come together and you stand up for yourself. You're also taught that you have to stand up for a just fight. And you don't fight a battle that is unjust. And if you feel like it's an unjust battle, you don't go. Right? And we have from, you know, modern Muslims, people like Muhammad Ali, right? That said, this is unjust. I'm not going to Vietnam. Got stripped from his world title, went to prison, you know what I mean? And he felt like that was the right thing to do and he did the right thing. So it's really, really important to bring that up. That even though that could have been considered jihad, right? Muhammad Ali could have gone off to war and considered that jihad. But he felt like if this is not a just war, then there's no reason for me to be there. And in the time of the Prophet, the one thing that we can relate to is the battle between the beginnings of Sunnah and Shia, and how some prophets sat it out. Some Sahaba sat it out. They said, we can't tell the haqq min al-batil, we can't tell the right from the wrong, so we're sitting it out. We choose to not participate in this. Right? So for us as Muslims today, I think we live in times where there's a lot of confusion around us, right? I'll bring up Syria, for example, and you still have a lot of Muslims that are on the fence, they're not sure what's going on. If you don't know what's going on, sit it out. You know, you don't have to make up your mind. We don't have to have an answer for everything. So this concept of jihad is very important, but it's actually important for us to realize that we do have the idea, and when people bring it up, yeah, but you know, your book talks about violence. No, it's not our book talks about violence. Our book talks about the idea of not being cowards. Of if somebody comes into your home, you stand up for yourself. If somebody comes to kick you out of your land, you stand up for yourself and you fight for yourself. And there are rules of fighting in Islam before the Western world ever dreamt about, you know, the Geneva Conventions and all that. So we had rules to regulate us, whether, you know, the old and the women and anybody that went inside their homes and closed their doors, right? They're safe. You can't harm them, right? So this is why when you see a lot of what we see today on TV and you hear the stories, you're like, these are people that don't know the basics of Islam. You know, like the Prophet said, fight, and you must fight, right? And he said, if somebody goes in their home and closes their door, they're done. This is not someone that you go near. It's over, right? You don't tear down a tree. You don't ruin a source of water. You don't harm an older person. You don't harm a child. You don't harm a woman. So when you hear some of the things that you hear today, it makes you, you know, it's like, these are people that don't know the basics of Islam. And then belief in Jesus is another one, right? So we mentioned this multiple times, that as Muslims living in a non-Muslim country, it's really important to understand Jesus' role, what we saw Jesus as. So if I'm talking to my friends, I always talk about Jesus. Yeah, absolutely believe in Jesus. Jesus is really important. The caveat here is that Jesus is not God. Jesus is not the Son of God. Is not the nephew of God. Jesus is a prophet, just like Moses, just like Muhammad. And that's, where you'll rub people the wrong way. But the distinction there is really important because we can't associate anybody else with God. There's God with no association, no partners, right? So, another one that's not on there, which I guess because they're on their status of women, is Muslims can marry multiple women. That's another hot topic that, will come up. What else? What other things do people usually bring up? What does Fox News throw? Seriously, what do you guys hear? Somebody's talking about Islam. Like hot questions, controversial questions, misconceptions.
Well, basically, Muslims are terrorists.
Well, yeah. I mean, the easiest answer for that is, if all Muslims were terrorists, we're doomed because there's 1.3 billion people.
Yeah.
That's 1 out of 6 people is ready to blow up. So that's a lot. That's a lot of people. There's no way out. So I had somebody that I went to school with who used to tell me, yes, all Muslims are very violent except the non-practicing Muslims. So if you're not violent, you're not practicing Islam. You're just a bad Muslim. So his conclusion was, there's a lot of bad Muslims in the world. So obviously, that is not true. And that's why I mentioned earlier, you can't be a Muslim without studying the early life of the Prophet. Seeing how he lived his life when he was weak, and then seeing how he lived his life as a leader, and then seeing how he lived his life when he was in command, right? So when he was in a position where there were people around him that were weaker than him, what did he decide to do? When he was in position, when he was the weaker person, what did he decide to do? So one of those was, we talked about the migration, and for a lot of Muslims that live in the West today, obviously Christy, not you, but for a lot of us that live in the West today, we are migrants, very similar to the early Muslim migrants that left Mecca and went to Medina, or that left Mecca and went to Habasha. These were Muslims that were weak, or were treated unfairly, or were punished for their beliefs, and left their countries. Today, a lot of Muslims leave Muslim countries and go to other countries to be treated more fairly, right? So I come from a family that migrated from Egypt. He comes from, migrated from Pakistan. So we left the country and migrated somewhere else for for a better lifestyle, right? Now, when the Prophet did that and went to Medina, and when the Muslims did that and went to Habasha, they were ordered to do what? They were ordered to live in harmony with those that they went to live with, right? And the people that they went to live with are some of the we regard the people of Medina that took on the Muslims as what? They're some of the best Muslims that ever lived, right? These are very, very high-standing Muslims, right? So, in a way, we should look at the societies that took us in, that we live with, in that manner, I think for the majority of the part, regardless of what happens, we still practice Islam, better than a lot of Muslim countries. You have the freedom to do things like what I'm doing right now, A lot of places you can't do this. So, it's important to treat the society that we live in with sincerity. And I'll give a couple examples. One, we had the university I went to, MSA, was really, really big. It was the largest club on campus. It was very, very strong, very, very active. The president or prime minister or vice president of the MSA went on the next year to become the president of the student association, the campus student association, right? So it was a bigger school, a lot bigger than TAMIU, big students. Being the president of the student association is actually a full-time job. You're not in a school, it's a full-time position. And usually it's a big deal because those guys usually end up going into politics, right? So the guys that I knew that were there are all in politics. They're involved in local politics. So it's a big position. So the guy that one year, when I was there, my senior year, was a Muslim, was Lebanese Muslim, who is now, kind of a bigger deal in Toronto with the Liberal Party. So he's still very politically active. When he won and became Prime Minister of the Student Council, one of the things that a lot of Muslims criticized him for was, in Canada, there's pubs and bars on the campus because drinking age is a lot younger. So one of the things that they criticized him about was that he didn't shut down the pubs and bars on campus. And they said, "You are the worst Muslim ever." How are you going to be a Muslim and have bars on campus? You got to shut down these bars. And his response, which I agree with, was, we are a minority. He goes, unless you can convince the majority of this campus to become Muslims, live by our rules, you can't enforce your rules as a minority on the majority. Because the backlash from it is going to be a lot worse than the benefit from shutting down the bars. Because the people that live there don't agree with your philosophy. They don't believe in your religion. They don't see the harm in alcohol, right? So if you come in here and you're now the bad guy who took away the bars, the backlash from that decision is going to be what? It's going to be everybody's going to hate Muslims, right? So what have you done? You've done no good here. People haven't stopped drinking, right? People haven't gone away from bars. They're just going to go to the bar down the street because you're not going to close the bars in the city. So I love his response to it, that we are a minority. So as long as we're a minority, you can't enforce your rules on somebody else without showing them the benefit in it first, right? So when people talk about Sharia law and Muslims want to take over the country and have Sharia courts, I'm like, bro, no, we don't, because that's no good for anyone. We don't even have judges that could run these Sharia courts, to have these Sharia courts, right? When you hear about it in the news, it's like, oh, Muslims want to take over the country and have Sharia laws. So, what else, guys? What else? What are some hot topics? So it's unfair. We used to have this on campus. We used to have these meetings on campus once a week or once every other week, and they were like dawah classes. Common questions that would come up, common concerns that may come up, how to answer them. So I feel really bad for you guys here on campus. There's only a few of you. You guys, for the most part, don't really have somebody to bounce off ideas off of. So not that I'm a great help. If I can help, I will help. Usually I gotta look stuff up. You can ask Rosa, we can ask Tarek, who was here, which was amazing. You can always call him and ask him, he knew a lot. But I would say a good source for me that I always go to is yslam.org. It's a good source that I go to look up stuff, and it's a good source that I send people to. And it answers a lot of these simple questions like, why do Muslim women cover their hair? And you know, the idea of marrying multiple women, and the idea of jihad, and the idea of, I don't know, whatever other hot topic. There's usually a few that just come up all the time.
Yeah, I checked it out.
Huh?
I checked it out.
yslam.org?
Yeah.
Obviously, this is how Muslim women dress. As you can see, different cultures wear them in different colors. It's important to know that the different cultures have them in different colors. Yeah, 1.6 to 1.8 billion. You know, large population in Indonesia, India, and China. A lot of people don't know that, but China actually has a lot of Muslims. And China's Muslims are some of the Muslims that are really bad shape because they're not allowed to practice. Status of women, obviously from the Quran, we all know that women are equal to men, right? So the idea of, I've heard this too, well, how come when a man dies, a woman inherits only half of his net worth? Right, you guys know that, right? Mm-hmm. So me and my sister, we are going to inherit my dad, I get double what she gets. Right? Mm. Yeah, what's a reasonable answer for that? Is it because women are half as worth as a man? No? Because I can beat her up and take her half anyways? No, the more logical answer for it was the inheritance is one of the things in Islam that's actually dictated word by word, and it's one of the things that we follow from the Quran. So if you're talking about Sharia law, this is one of the things that Sharia law falls under. It's when somebody dies, what happens with their wealth? That falls under Sharia law. Because you'll hear a lot of people talk about Sharia law and they have no idea what that means. So this is one of the things that Sharia law is. It means that when somebody dies, what happens with their wealth? Before Islam, women didn't get anything, right? And in a lot of cultures, I mean, you look at royal families of Europe, right? The women don't get anything. You guys watch Game of Thrones, you know this, right? So to give her. Now, and if she, and